Hello everyone and welcome back to my Christmas card series for this year. We're on day 14 and I have this beautiful snow flurry card for you today using some Simon Says and Lawn Fawn products. So here I have the large stitched snowflakes and the small snowflake sets from Lawn Fawn. These are really great dies. And I also just went through my stash and I picked out some, glimmer paper, some metallic paper, some any kind of paper that I thought would look good as a snowflake. I kind of went with a color palette, whites and silvers, and I also cut out some vellum that I thought would look good on this card. And I didn't use all of these, but I just wanted to have a bunch on hand for this card. Next here, I wanted to take a piece of Bristol smooth paper and do some ink blending. I have spun sugar, wilted violet, and salty ocean. And I'm going for kind of like an early morning look with that. And I'm also using the Comfort and Joy stamp set as well as some glitter Wow embossing powder as well as some Brutus Monroe embossing powder as well. So we're going to get into the ink blending here, and I'm going to start from the bottom with the Salty Ocean. And like I said, I wanted to do kind of like an early morning look. I was driving to work a couple of days ago and I saw the sky and I got really inspired. It just looked really pretty with the different gradients of color. So that's what I was going for here. And then taking the wilted violet, going in between where I want the blue and the spun sugar. And I kept blending until I got the desired look. And I really, really enjoyed how this turned out. These colors went really well together. And I have a feeling that I'll be using this color combination again. Coming in with the spun sugar, trying to keep my hands or my fingers out of the way because with Bristol paper, the ink does set on top of it, and if you get your fingers in it, it will leave fingerprints. So that's why I'm just going to use a piece of scratch paper to help hold it down. And again, I really like the way this turned out. Made a really pretty scene, and this is exactly what my sky looked like the other morning, and that is what I was going for. And I won't use this entire panel. I do plan on cutting it down, but I wanted to make sure that I had enough coverage with these colors. I'm so glad that Thanksgiving's here. We just had some Thanksgiving down at my mother-in-law's, and it was delicious. And then this evening we're going out to some more family members to have a nice meal and some fun. And I just hit that with my heat gun just to make sure it was nice and dry because I plan on doing some heat embossing. I'm going to take this shimmer spray and spritz the background just to add a little bit more shine. Hit that with my heat gun and we'll be ready to start the heat embossing. And I do want to apologize if I'm a little bit out of frame here. I got a new phone, so it's a bit bigger than my old one, so I'm just working on the adjustments of getting the screen in the shot here. But anyway, next we're going to get into the embossing. I am using the snowflakes from the Comfort and Joy stamp set, and I'm just going to start using, because random ones here and there, and I'm going to kind of swap between my different embossing powders to get the kind of look that I was going for. I wanted to have a nice layering of snowflakes in the background as well as the three-dimensional ones that I'm going to put on a little bit later. And I really like this Wow embossing powder. It's super shimmery and lots of sparkle. Now it doesn't show up really, really well unless you look really closely at it, but it does add a nice sparkle to it. I really like the way that this turns out. And I love all of these snowflakes in this Comfort and Joy stamp set. They are so detailed. And whenever you stamp them and emboss them, the detail really does show up really, really well. And I'm just using my anti-static powder tool in between each of my layers here just to make sure that I don't get any stray embossing where I don't want it. Next, I'm using some Brutus Monroe Alabaster White embossing powder. So again, my color scheme for the snowflakes is kind of like a white and glittery and silver. That was my thought process here. Again, you could do any, snowflake colors that you want. Anything would look great with this, but I wanted to go for kind of, a winter morning where the snow is just starting to fall. Keep going, adding the different snowflakes. And it's nice because you can layer these on top of each other I did a card last year, a couple of cards last year, where I layered some snowflakes on top of each other, and it looked really cool with the embossing. I believe Nicole Spohr had done a couple of cards that way too. If I can find her video, I'll link to it above. I just really like how these turned out. They're so detailed and pretty. And I really like snowflakes because they're all unique, just like people. Everybody's different. Never find the same snowflake twice. Next, I'm going to take the silver, sterling silver embossing powder from Brutus Monroe and add that to these smaller ones. I didn't want a whole lot of silver because I do have quite a few silver snowflakes that are die cut, so I didn't want it to be too much silver, but I really like the shine that this embossing powder gives off. And again, I do apologize for being out of screen here. I was just adding that larger snowflake again to the bottom. Anti-static powder tool, and I am using Versamark ink. It is a great sticky ink for doing embossing. Get those covered, and I believe those will be the last of the heat embossed snowflakes. Get my embossing powder put away. And I kind of wanted it to cascade from the top corner down to the bottom corner. That was my thought. I wanted it to kind of scoop across the card base, and it'll eventually all the snowflakes will kind of encompass around the sentiment that we're going to put in later. Now that I have that all done, I'm going to get my actual panel cut out here. And it's okay, you did all that heat embossing, and now you're going to cut some of the snowflakes off. But I really like the way that looks, where they're kind of off of the sheet a little bit. It makes it look like it was a little more on purpose. Really like the way that this came out. Get my card base ready. Just using some Neenah 110-pound cardstock for an A2 top folding card base. And I'm just going to kind of lay out my snowflakes that I have here. Again, you could do this any way you want. You could pop some up on 3D foam tape. You could, tape or attach them all nice and flat. I was looking, I wanted it to be some pieces kind of lift up on the sides. I glued most of them down by their centers so that the edges of the snowflakes would kind of lift up off the card base, give it a little bit more texture. Next, I kind of fiddled a bit with how I wanted to do my sentiment. I went back and forth between a couple of different, texts and sentiments that were in this Comfort and Joy stamp set, and eventually ended up with the Let It Snow and the Merry Christmas stamps from the Comfort and Joy set. And then I'm also using this Simon Says Frames die. That it is a really neat die set. It cuts out the nice skinny frames. I really like the way it just adds just enough detail to the sentiment without taking away from it. So I'm using some vellum and some metallic paper from DVWC, and we're going to create this sentiment banner. So there it is all cut out, and it's a really nice thin delicate frame. It's the perfect size. It just adds it up. It's really elegant, and that's what I was going for with this card. This card's a little more, I think sophisticated and elegant. Apologize for my head getting in the way. I'm going to heat emboss the sentiment on this vellum using some of the Brutus Monroe sterling silver embossing powder. And I just used the grids on my Misti paper here to line up my sentiment to make sure it was nice and straight. And then I made sure my heat gun was off to the side getting warm so that it could melt the embossing powder quickly on this vellum, because again, vellum does have a tendency to burn if you leave the heat on it too quickly. So I just kept my heat gun moving back and forth until everything was melted. And I really like the way that this turned out. Super sweet. So here I made a little bit of a mistake. Instead of attaching my base before I added all the snowflakes and all the detail, I did all of that before I added it, but in the end I got it to work. So I'm just using my T-square ruler here to make sure that my sentiment was lined up nice and straight. I attached it with some multimedia matte adhesive just behind the text so that the adhesive wouldn't show behind the vellum. And then I took that same adhesive and attached and put little dabs all the way around this really skinny frame and gently placed it in its spot around that vellum piece and held it down with some acrylic blocks so that it was nice and sturdy. And now we can start attaching our snowflakes. This is where you can get creative. This is where your personality and your creative touch comes in. You add them where you want, how you want. I was just, I didn't want the same pattern papers next to each other. I was kind of going for a very organic, flowing style here. I didn't want it to be too structured, is what I was going for. And these pieces had a little bit of a hard time sticking, especially the ones that were on top of the glitter embossed areas. They didn't want to stick too much to those spots. But I got them attached down. See, that one really didn't like to stick in that spot. And I probably could have moved it, but I really wanted that one there. So I just added more glue, and I kept adding more glue. But eventually like I said, I got it to stick. And I really like the way this card turns out. And just going along, adding each of those. And again, I'm just attaching them with the center of the snowflake because I wanted the edges of each of the snowflakes to kind of pop up so it would give it some nice dimension and texture to the card. And I'm using my Marvy jewel picker tool to help pick up some of the smaller snowflakes that I cut out and get those placed. Next, I've got the Lucy's Little Things Sprinkles Snowdrift snowflakes. These were perfect for this card, and I just placed them around where I wanted them to go, used my Marvy jewel picker, and picked all of those up and attached those. And these give some nice dimension as well. I'm just waiting for the snow to arrive here. All of our snow's gone. It was flurrying a little bit today. We had a little bit of flakes flying through the air, but nothing real heavy sticking yet. And next, I'm taking these Christmas jewels from Pretty Pink Posh, and attaching them here and there, some of them on top or right in the center of some of the snowflakes, and I'm just using the white ones because I thought they would look good against this nice silvery background. There's a nice little flurry coming down out of the sky there. Next, I'm going to get this card panel attached to our card base. And I'm just using this is where I realized that I should have done this ahead of time, but in the end, like I said, I got it to work out. I'm using some 3M foam strips as well as some Doris 3M foam strips to attach this to the background. I wanted just a little tiny bit of dimension to pop it up off the back, and we'll get that centered up on our card panel. And I'm just going around with my scissors here and trimming off some of the larger bits that are sticking off of the edge of the card. Again, you could leave them in there, but some of them are pretty big. I left just a few hanging off the side. I didn't think they would interfere with the envelope. And now I'm taking some Nouveau crystal drops and adding them all around in silver and white in places where I felt I needed to fill in just a few more snowflakes. That will finish up the card for today. Again, I want to thank you guys for coming by, supporting my channel with all your subscriptions and your likes and your wonderful comments. Hope everyone has a wonderful Thanksgiving holiday, and I will be back on Monday with day 15. Please don't forget to hit the subscribe button as well as the little notification bell so you don't miss out on any more videos in this Christmas series. I can't wait to show you what I've got up my sleeve for next week. And again, have a wonderful day, a wonderful holiday, and I'll see ya. Bye!